Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. How are you this fine day? If you are just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I am a wellness advocate, a mom, a nana, a girlfriend. If you see me make a couple of strange faces today, I've tweaked my back a little bit. So it's just, it does much better when I'm up moving around. So I'm up moving around and hopefully today is already a better day than yesterday. Woo! Okay, so most of the time I'm also a jazzerciser and a runner, but today I will be a yogi because that is what is helping my back the most. And I started Wellness Wednesday with the intent that sharing ideas and sharing information with each other helps each of us to be more well, because there are some things that work for some people and some things that don't work. And the more we share information about what works for us, the more others can find what works for them. So I've been working on a project lately, and the reason I chose today's topic is because I myself have been a victim of imposter syndrome, which isn't a real syndrome as per the diagnostic manuals, but it is a real thought process that often comes with generalized anxiety disorder. And it's often connected with other facets of anxiety. So today we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. And if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till later, just drop a comment. Let me know that you saw it, if it helped you, and or if it was relatable for you, and feel free to share as always if you found it helpful, because you never know who else might find it. If as you're listening you know someone else that might be helped by this but don't want to necessarily tag them, you can share with people through Messenger, and then that way you're sharing with just that person and nobody else needs to see it. So there's a project I'm working on that has brought a little bit of this up to the surface for me, because if you've been on my Wellness Wednesday live before, you've heard me say that anxiety is not something you ever completely recover from. It's a daily battle. So there are sometimes things that while I have mine fairly well controlled for the most part, I do see times where certain things in certain situations bring it to the surface. Good morning, Miss Erica. Yes, yogi. That's me today. So oftentimes, if imposter syndrome is something you're dealing with, it will rear its head when you are embarking on something that's out of your comfort zone. For a lot of people, that's a change in their professional life, a promotion, a new job, something that they've never done before, change in department. In my case, this project I'm working on has been bringing a little bit of it up. I am a decent writer. I would even suffice it to say that I'm a good writer. However, in college, and this is an example of where my imposter syndrome has reared its head before. In college, I found myself very stressed out by writing. That's the perfectionist side of me. I would write and I would change and I would edit, and I would write and I would change and I would edit. And the way I often knew that it was right where I wanted it to be was that when I was done and I was reading it out loud back to myself, I would actually, if I had the right hook at the end and all the things, and I know this sounds strange, but just bear with me for a minute, I would actually cry. Happy tears, probably a little stressful tears. That paper, if I was reading it from somebody else, would have jerked a heartstring in me and made the point perfectly. However, in the process of doing this, a lot of times by the time I submitted the paper, I was absolutely 100% convinced it was crap. Just, that's it. By the time I submitted the paper, I was usually 100% convinced it was crap. And nobody was ever more surprised than me when it would come back with an A. Now, this would happen over and over again. Did I have plenty of A papers to prove that I was in fact a good writer, along with good comments, up to and including a professor that thought I was PhD material? Yes. Did it stop this from happening every single time that I sat down to write a paper? Absolutely not. So that's kind of an example of what we're going to talk about today. It's an imposter syndrome is an irrational fear that you're going to be found out, that somebody's going to discover you're not as good as you think you are, that you're not who you think you are. or that you are not capable of what you think you are. Not only is it a thing, I actually didn't know it had a name until a few years ago. Not only is it a thing, but according to Psychology Today, 25 to 30% of high achievers may suffer from it, and as much as 70% of all adults will experience at least once in their lifetime. It is closely associated with anxiety and depression, as I previously stated, as well as low self-esteem and low self-worth. That's a real shocker there now, isn't it? Most prevalent among women. Men are also susceptible to imposter syndrome, and it was first documented in high-achieving women in the 1970s. However, there was a scientist within the psychology field whose name is not coming to me right now, and I don't have his name down here in my notes. Good morning, Danielle. That recognized the underlying symptoms of it back in the early 20s, and that it was just never actually given a name or put in writing until the 70s. So what is imposter syndrome? According to Psychology Today, it is people who struggle because they believe that they're undeserving of their accomplishments and the high esteem in which they are usually held. So these are usually, believe it or not, people that are held in high esteem, that are well respected, and they don't think that they are undeserving of achievements. It's not just a matter of being humble. It's a matter of not believing inside that they are worthy or deserving of it. They feel that they aren't as competent or intelligent as others think, and that soon enough people will discover the truth about them. Those suffering are often well accomplished and may even hold high office or have numerous academic degrees. Now, I have a note here about a cry for attention versus true belief. There are those who will utilize different platforms to talk about how dumb they are and how there's no way they're ever going to succeed at this. That is sometimes more of an attempt for validation. For people that are suffering from imposter syndrome, this is more of a true belief. You might see them, even when they are recognized, push that recognition to other people, and just basically downplay it, as if it's not a big deal. Because despite their abundance evidence of success, now I talked about all the papers. I could talk about 21 years on the job, where I could do the job basically with my eyes closed and my hands tied behind my back, but still had days where I just thought, what the heck am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. What are these people thinking? You know what I mean? So instead of acknowledging capabilities and efforts, they often attribute their accomplishments to external and transient causes such as luck, good timing, or an effort that they don't feel able to expend all of the time. So whether in areas of academic achievement or career success, a person can constantly struggle with pressure and personal expectations. And a lot of times that's what it boils down to for imposter syndrome, is that it doesn't matter what anybody else says about you. You have your expectation bar here. And even if you've already exceeded everyone else's, yours is still up here, and you're still being very, very critical of what you could have done better instead of recognizing what you've done well. In 2018, two professors did a study to define imposter syndrome, and they defined it as in people who just received their advanced degrees as a condition where high-achieving individuals either ascribe their accomplishments to luck and contingency rather than individual skill and merit, or find their profession to be a BS job that provides little social value. Also something I'm good at, also something I'm guilty of, meaning that even when I was excelling at my highest level, I would tell myself that it really didn't matter, that the job didn't matter, or the project didn't matter, or the paper didn't matter, and that that it really provided little value. So this is just a little window into what imposter syndrome looks like. Honestly, I've experienced it a large portion of my life and never even realized it had a name or knew it to be what it was. Just again, thought it was an integral part of my personality along with the depression and anxiety until I actually read an article about it and I went, oh my gosh, this is me. So when you run into that kind of light bulb, good morning, Miss Beth. When you run into that kind of light bulb, that's a good thing because it's a signal that you are starting to see things that you know you need to change. That's generally a signal that your mindset needs work. So what triggers it? Having attention called to your success, awards, passing an exam with flying colors, being promoted. Those are most often the things that will trigger it. Having a failure, experiencing a failure after a string of successes will trigger imposter syndrome. Perfectionism, which often comes along with various anxiety disorders, can trigger, I just talked about that, your bar is here and it doesn't matter where anybody else's bar is or whether or not you've surpassed it, your bar is here and you're still trying to get there. And chances are your bar is so high, you're probably never really going to hit it anyway. And that's usually ourselves and our mindset that creates that situation. So perfectionism and then the fear of success. A lot of times, believe it or not, people fear success because they fear that it's going to change their lives beyond their comfort zone, or they fear what it's going to take to be successful. And that will trigger the imposter syndrome. I can't do this. I don't know how to do this, even if they do. And what's going to happen if I do this and this happens, then what? So you can hear, if you've been following my Wellness Wednesdays, all the times we've talked about anxiety and some of the ways it manifests, you can hear a lot of that in there. So how do you get past it? Well, you can start by becoming Sherlock Holmes. I know that sounds funny, but it's true. You need to prove, you don't need to, but this is a way to get past it, is to investigate your own inarguable achievements. The ones that are concrete, like if I'm freaking out about a writing project, the best thing for me to do would be to go back through my school files, right? Because that's what's brought this to the surface this week, is to go back to my school files and look at all of the papers that I've written that have gotten A's and positive comments. I think for my entire 4-year college career to date, I had one paper that I got a B on, the rest were A's. So that's an example of how there's really no reason for me to have myself convinced that I'm not a good writer. Make sense? So you can investigate, go back to the things you've done and use them, put them in front of you, amass them to confirm for you, not anybody else, for you, that these are concrete, inarguable achievements. You can share your feelings with loved ones, but you need to do it outside of a setting that actually triggers the imposter syndrome. In a regular conversation, maybe a conversation like the one we're having now, after it's happened, share your feelings with a loved one that you trust that can reaffirm that you are these things you don't think you are. You have to expect to make mistakes when you're trying something new. When we put this bar here and it's something we've never done before, it's even harder to hit that bar. It's hard enough to hit that bar when we put it there. But if you're trying something new, that bar gets even further and further away. So expect to make mistakes and understand that making mistakes are part of the learning process. In 21 years at my job, I wouldn't have been as good at it as I was had I not made more mistakes than I can possibly count. And that's the case with anything. And for the most part with anyone, the most successful people are the ones who have failed over and over and over again. But the important thing is that they learn from those failures. You can seek a mentor with experience. If you have someone in your circle that you know has experienced something like this, for example, I have a mentor who's also a quasi-coach, and she has experienced it as well. So I can look to people like that for help with, to share my feelings with, and also for help on how to overcome that imposter syndrome. Reframe it as a strength. Now, what this basically means is just what I said about the failures. If you don't try, if you don't make mistakes, you can't learn from them. So making mistakes, as long as you're willing to own them and to learn from them, is a way to overcome the imposter syndrome and to strengthen your own self-worth and self-esteem. Don't compare yourself to others. Everybody is in their own spot on their own path of their own journey. In my field in network marketing, and even in my previous field as an executive officer, it's very, very easy to compare yourself to other people that are doing something way differently or are more successful or are making more money than you. But most of the time, they are in a different place in the journey. You might be comparing yourself to somebody who's been at it for 40 years in the network marketing field, direct sales. You might be comparing yourself to somebody that's been at it for 20 years when you've only been at it for 2. So it's important not to compare yourself to others. Comparison is the thief of joy. It's something that people who experience anxiety and depression very often do. Part of the problem with that mindset is that we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, or we're comparing situations we're in to others. And we're doing it in a way to tear ourselves down or to tell ourselves what we should have done, instead of, hey, I could, maybe this person's got the right idea. Maybe next time I can do it this way. It needs to be more of a forward, if you're going to compare, it needs to be more of a forward thinking comparison versus I suck because I'm not doing it the way this person is. Does that make sense? And that brings me to the next bullet point on how do you get past it, which you guys have heard me say over and over again and even seen me get a little emotional about. Self-talk. Others believe in you, but you don't. And that is your self-talk. What are you saying to yourself in the mirror? What am I saying to myself when I'm writing something? Am I saying, I suck, I'm so bad at this, why am I doing this? Or am I saying, I can do this, I have done this, and I will do this. I am totally capable, and it's okay if I make a mistake or if it's not 100% perfect, as long as I've given it my best shot. So self-talk, y'all, I cannot emphasize enough how important what we're saying to ourselves in the mirror and what we're saying to ourselves in our brains is to the rest of our mental health, mental and physical. And then finally, the best way, because it is so closely associated with anxiety and depression, if you are treating the symptoms of your anxiety, depression, whether that looks like medication, whether that looks like exercise and diet, a combination of all of the above, anything like that, meditation, yoga, any of those things that are beneficial for reducing the symptoms of stress and of anxiety and depression can also help reduce the symptoms of imposter syndrome. The more capable you feel physically and the more capable you feel mentally, and the higher your self-worth and self-esteem is, not based on anyone else or any one thing, the less likely you are to experience or the more likely you are able to muscle through those imposter syndrome feelings when they rear their ugly heads. So that was a lot of information. I hope you found it helpful. The key things to remember here is that you believe you're incapable, and that's what you're telling yourself, why should your judgment on that issue be trusted? Does that make sense? If you are always telling yourself that you can't do it, that you're not capable, that you're not strong enough, that you're not smart enough, whatever, then that might be a time where you do. And I rarely encourage listening to other people, but in a case like this is where I would. If other people are telling you you are, and you are telling yourself you are not, then why would your judgment be trustworthy if all you have is negative things to say about yourself? And that would be the time to listen more to other people and what they have to say. Focus on the hard evidence. Play Sherlock Holmes. Find all the evidence of everything you've ever done that was wonderful. Anything that you can put in front of you, put on a vision board, or on your refrigerator, or as a note on your computer to remind you of what you absolutely can do and are capable of. Remember that you're not alone. Remember those statistics, those are based on research and surveys and probably aren't even quite accurate. They may actually be less accurate than the actual numbers. But again, according to that study by Psychology Today, 25 to 30% of high achievers may suffer from it, and up to 70% of people, as much as 70, have experienced imposter syndrome at some point in their lifetime. And then the final thing I want you to remember is that failure, again, is how you learn and how you become better. So you may have the bar here, but you need to remember that that's your bar. And that when you're learning new things, that you may need to lower that bar and give yourself grace and room to make mistakes. Because for most of us, I think that's really how we learn best. I know that I can talk to my daughter, my grandson, until I'm blue in the face about all the things they should do based on my experiences. But we know, those of us that are parents, we know that the best way we learn is by making that mistake and doing it for ourselves. And that's why parents get so frustrated. So again, those 4 things to remember. If you believe you're incapable, why should your judgment be trusted? And I know that may seem confusing, but that's kind of a play on your own psyche, if you will. If you believe you're incapable, then maybe your beliefs about yourself aren't really that trustworthy, is maybe a better way to say it. Focus on the hard evidence of what you've done and what you've accomplished to muscle you through. You are not alone, and failure is how you learn and become better. And at the end of the day, a lot of these things boil down to fear. The fear of failure, fear that things are going to change, fear of success, and that sometimes the hardest thing to do is to feel that fear and do it anyway. So I hope you found that helpful. Again, if you did, or you think you know somebody that might benefit from it, please feel free to share. Currently with my back situation, I'm considering talking about core strength next week, but truthfully, that's probably not what I'm going to talk about. Not quite sure yet. If you have a topic idea or something that you would like to see covered and you're not sure where to begin with it, send me a message. Drop a comment. I'll look into it. I'll be happy. I love to learn, so I'll be happy to dig into it a little bit and see if I can cover it on a future Wellness Wednesday. And that's all I have for you today. I hope you all have a fabulous Wednesday, and I'll see you next week. Bye.